Hey, welcome back. Doing a quick tutorial on another one of these slot method ergo pinch grips on how to get the bands in the slot for a couple of gentlemen that just recently bought one from me. You take the bands, you fold the top to the center. Out here at the end, it's going to go on the fork. You bring the bottom back over the top, even with the top. You stretch that band, push it down in the slot. Let it go. Bring it around. Same thing on the other side. Bring that top down. Bring that bottom up, even with the top. Stretch it. Push it down in the slot. Let it go. You can look at your tag ends and see if you've got them even, and as you get a little better at shooting them, you may want to make them shorter. The shorter you get them, the harder they shoot, as long as it don't get too short for your anchor point. And most people are shooting somewhere between a factor of 0.4 to maybe up to as high as a 6 if you really want to max them out. But let me raise the camera back up here and get it raised back up to do some shooting with, and I'll stand up. Pardon the moving around the camera while I raise it back up. But I've got around a 29, 30-inch draw, depending on where I quit back here, usually around the 29, so I can't remember. I think these are maybe 6.5 long for my active length. Didn't bring a ruler out here with me, but you don't want them to be so short if you're going to use a cheek anchor that you can't. You want to leave you a little bit. If you max them out where you can't hardly move them, two things. One, they're usually pretty hard to hold there without kind of shaking around from the tension. And the other thing, the bands won't last as long. And since you asked me about shooting them, this is the shape of the frame. That's a thumb hook. That's where the thumb goes. And you bring the other around, just like gripping somebody's hand if you were going to shake hands with them. You bring those bands back around the forks. You don't pull this way, because you'll just pull them through. When you pull them around the outside edge, they bind back on themselves, and that's what helps keep them in place. Now, as far as shooting goes, I'm among the most average shooters, and you can find much better tutorial videos on YouTube. But if you're going to be an aimer, which is what I recommend with this type frame, you find a position on your cheek and be consistent. Where do you anchor that at? I typically anchor with my thumb in the corner of my mouth. And you want to keep that frame straight up and down. You don't want it tilted forward. You don't want it tilted back, because that's going to make one band accelerate faster than the other one, throw your shot off, get a fork hit, worst case, get a hand hit. And on the release, you don't want to be trying to help it and throw it. So let that ammo slip out of those fingers. You don't want to grab in front of the ammo either, because you're going to have a tendency to tweak it. I'm using 3/8 or 9.5 steel on this particular pouch. You want to get on top of that ammo. Getting in front of it, I know you're tempted to do that initially as a beginner because you're going to get a better purchase on it, but you got to tend to want to do this number, and that tweaking is going to throw your shot off one way or the other. So you want to get it centered in the pouch. They just finger and this section of the bone on that pointer finger. This is how I do it. And I'm just gonna barely let this one go over there. It won't hurt anything, but just let that slip out like that. Now, when you're aiming, you want those bands one lined up over the other. And this section right here, and this particular attachment, when you draw it back, it gets pretty thin. And you want to put that target right in the center of those bands. Now, if this had been an OTT shooter, then the band's been coming around the front, you'd be sighting off the corner of the frame. Which fork hit wise would have been a better choice to get you guys started with. The only downside to that is when most people start out, wrapping and tucking's a little bit fiddly. Let's close this, my battery's getting low. Hopefully I can get through it before it shuts down. But remember not to tweak that frame forward or backwards or out or in, because that's going to move it around. It's just like sighting down the barrel of a gun. When you pull that, I may not hit anything doing this, and I'm getting some glare, but you pull that back, you see that narrow part of the band? If I'm going to shoot at that can down there, I want to put that can, put that center section of the band right on that can, and keeping it straight. You can tell when you get it pretty straight, because you line those bands up, you won't hardly be able to see the bottom one. So I'll move out here, and I'm lining up here at the corner of my mouth. This is not one of my usual pouches, but it's what we're going to use. Knocked it down, but you notice I had the rear elbow up. It's not so much about the position of the elbow, but the reason you want to keep that elbow elevated is to keep that thumb and pointer finger straight in regards to pinching the ammo. If you let that rear elbow drop down, then you're going to have a tendency to twist that pouch, and you want that pouch to stay straight when you turn it loose. And that's the reason for the ammo. And I know there's some of you shooters out there, and when I first started, I figured out how to, but you have to start compensating, and you're going to have to get that wrist down some way, or you're going to liable to start getting fork hits. But that's a short and sweet and not a very good tutorial on shooting and banding this thing. But if you'll pay attention to keeping that frame square out here, not tilted forward or backwards or in or out, and keeping that pullback straight back here, making sure you're keeping those fingers not like this or this, but straight, then that'll give you a good starting point. Trying to think there's something else that I'm think of that might help you. I know with myself, a lot of times if I'm not careful, I have a tendency to maybe let that hand drift away from my face just a tad. And just like with shooting a gun, you know, you start out, if you're moving a 32nd to a 16th on this end, in relation to where you're sighting either down the bands or off the edge of the fork. By the time it gets 10 meters, it's flew out of the path you intended to go a lot more than you'd think. But anyway, the videos went a little longer than I meant for it to, but that's going to be it for today. And remember, thumb goes down here on that thumb hook. So if you have any more questions, you got my number. You can give me a call. And the rest of y'all out there, appreciate you stopping by. And happy Mother's Day to to all the mothers out there. Appreciate you coming by. Everybody stay safe out there. Catch you next time.